It's about time to start our monthly meetup. So, first of all, a very warm welcome to BlockchainLab Drenthe. Let me start with a short introduction for a few new visitors. BlockchainLab Drenthe is a non-profit foundation with the goal to spread knowledge, experience and insights about blockchain technology in the broadest sense of the word towards entrepreneurs, students, schools, governmental bodies and private persons. We are heavily involved in Interreg project BLING, which stands for Blockchain in Government. This is a project with 13 partners in 6 North Sea region countries who collaborate to develop blockchain projects and applications for public services. If you want to learn more about BLING, follow the link in the description. But first, let me start with a service announcement. Please use the YouTube chat function if you want to ask the speakers some questions. You will have to log in. YouTube does not accept anonymous remarks. Do that with your Gmail account because YouTube is a Google company. And communicate with us. Let us know who you are, where you're from. We love to hear that kind of things. After this live stream, we will do an informal video gathering. This will be something relatively new. Last meetup we used a website called Kumo Space for this first time. It's a bit different than a video call where one person speaks and the rest listens. It's a bit like a video game where you enter a room where you can walk around and you can talk to everyone you meet within a certain circle. So you're able to have personal conversations and you can walk up to people and ask them questions without hearing everyone. This is much more natural than a video call in Jitsi or Teams. We even have a piano in our room where you can stand next to and listen to the music if you want to. I will show you the link to our Kumo space at the end of our meetup. Please join us afterwards for some questions or chit-chat. As BlockchainLab Drenthe, we do lots of things. We do research, we develop applications, audit external blockchain projects, give lectures, and in a few months we are going to start a blockchain minor for students at NHL Stenden University of Applied Sciences here in Emmen. The blockchain ecosystem is very much relying on innovation and constantly pushing boundaries of technology. That is probably the reason we see a lot of new faces at our meetups. Some of these new faces are startups. Young companies with relatively unexperienced founders encounter a lot of hurdles. That is why another Interreg project contacted us. Startup EDR helps startups from the north of the Netherlands and the northwest of Germany in many ways. Mentoring, networking, meetings, connecting them to students, etc. So if you are involved in a startup, in blockchain or otherwise, and you are from the region displayed on my slide, contact them or us and ask them how they can help you or how we can help you. Another exciting item I would like to mention at this point is that Interreg BLING is organizing a blockchain hackathon later this year. The Blingathon will be a 30 hours competition on November 13th and 14th. 150 to 200 participants will work in teams of 3 to 5 persons. They will be working on great challenges in 5 tracks: energy, transport, verifiable credentials, public services and e-health. It will be an amazing event with nice workshops, top coaches, nice cash prizes. So already make a mark in your agenda. This is breaking news, so more info will become available in the next weeks. Our monthly meetup has a format where we have 3 segments. First, I am going to talk about what's going on in the blockchain world. Then Rutger Bijl from Northchain will talk about their innovative blockchain solution. And then Danny Dreves will talk about DeFi and the Binance Smart Chain. Well, that was already a lot of information. So let's start with our first segment, what's going on in the blockchain space. And let's see what's going on in the blockchain space to start with the cryptocurrencies. As you can see by the red squiggly lines at the end of that side, is that it's not been going very well with cryptocurrencies, right? It's not the bloodbath we saw last month, but it's not very nice either. The markets have been trying to dip further, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. If we look at Bitcoin, it is at the moment at around 34,000 US dollars. It has been lower. It was a little bit under 30,000 and a lot of people got nervous. A lot of people were nervous that it was going to slide even further to maybe 20,000. Still, if you have your Bitcoins for long term, that's not a big problem because you would have probably bought around 7,000, 8,000 or even lower. But if you stepped into the market in the last few months, let's say 50, 55, even 60,000 US dollars, then you got a bit of a problem. So this is what happened. As you can see, last month a minus 14.1%. And that was on top of the minus 37% the month before. So last month I already spoke about it in that way, the halvening. A lot of people are making fun of that. I'll show you in a moment also. What you can see here is that the total market cap, which you can see down there, has gone down from 1.7 trillion to 1.3 trillion. That's minus 20%. So the total value of all the coins, crypto coins, is now 20% less in US dollars than it was the month before. And Bitcoin went down only 14%. So the Bitcoin dominance, as we call it, went up from 42% to 46%. Right? It stayed a little bit above the rest of the market. So 46% of all the money invested in cryptos is in Bitcoin. Yeah, I talked about the halvening, and it's all a point of perspective, right? So there are people that are reacting like that. The upper cartoon where they say it went down 50%, oh no, what I'm going to do now? Or there are a lot of people who are trying to buy the dips and they're looking at the same chart, the same price, and they're saying, yay, I have a chance to buy my Bitcoins at a 50% rebate. Right? The fact is that a lot of people lost a lot of money, a lot of newcomers, and McDonald's put out a tweet, as you can see, hey crypto bros, we got your back, apply now for a job at McDonald's. A little bit sarcastic. Here you can see a graph of Bitcoin versus US dollars and Ethereum versus US dollars. We saw that the months before, Ethereum outperformed the price of Bitcoin pretty substantially. But as you can see in this chart, the last 2-3 weeks, they have been identical. Really, they lay on top of each other. So Ether is losing the same amount of money as Bitcoin does. There's no outperformance anymore. Last meetup, I talked about EIP 1559, and that is a Ethereum improvement proposal to change something about Ethereum. Now, not only Ethereum is improving itself, Bitcoin is also doing that. Now, there is going to be a very large improvement, the largest of the last, let's say, 4 years. It's called Taproot. And Taproot changes something in the signature scheme in Bitcoin, which makes it more efficient. You're able to put more transaction under one signature. You can do multi-sig stuff, which makes it cheaper, a little bit more privacy, more efficient, and it's a small step towards smart contracts on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, it's a very democratic process, right? We're talking about blockchain and freedom and all kinds of stuff. But how does that work? These proposals are being posted, but who decides? How do they decide if a proposal is going to make it or not? I think you can see that here. What you see here is the last 2016 blocks mined. And that's not from today, that's for a few weeks ago. This is how you can see how they vote for these proposals. Every block that is mined by a miner will give a small signal, even 1 bit, in the version number they post in that mined block. They will say yes or no to the proposal, right? Otherwise, you could have a democratic process where the whole world wants to vote on this proposal, right? But I don't mine, and perhaps you don't mine blockchain or Bitcoin either. So what are we going to add to that voting process? No, these are the miners that really found the right hash, that mined the block, and when they mined that block, they put a yes or no to that proposal. Now, you can see a slider here that shows how many of those 2016 blocks were a yes and how many of them were a no, and how many were undecided. They wanted to have at least 90% yes to accept the proposal for Taproot. That Taproot proposal will go in effect in November. So the miners that really are involved in the process of mining are voting on that process. And like I said, this is from a few weeks ago. In the meantime, it has been accepted that score has been over 90%, and even earlier than they thought. They thought they would have that confirmation somewhere in August. So the Taproot improvement is locked in and will be activated in November. So you can see it's a very democratic process. And that's something very special, I think, the mechanism built into that. Now, I said these are 2016 blocks, and that's something special also. Every 2016 blocks, there is a new period in time in the Bitcoin blockchain where they look at the complexity, where they adjust the complexity. Every 2016 blocks, they look at how much time it takes to mine a block, right? If it is 8 minutes instead of 10, they will add to the complexity, making it a little bit more difficult. If it is a longer period in time, for instance, yesterday it was 14 minutes on average to mine a block, then they will take the complexity down. Now, why would it take 14 minutes? It takes 40 minutes because at the moment a lot of miners are switching off their rigs. So there is less computational power to mine these Bitcoin blocks. There are several reasons for that. One of the reasons is the attitude of China towards miners. China is getting a bit hostile when it comes to blockchain miners, and so many miners are taking their rigs and moving to another country, for instance Kazakhstan, where they also have cheap electricity, and where the government is a little bit more lenient towards miners. So there is less computational power, also because prices halved, as we saw just before, and it's less interesting, financially interesting to mine Bitcoins. So a lot of them are switching off, less computational power, which means it takes longer to mine a block. And if it takes longer to mine a block for at least 2016 blocks on average, then they will scale down the complexity, making it a little bit easier to compute a block. We're talking about the Chinese government, but also here in Holland, things have been a little bit hostile towards Bitcoin in the last week. We saw this Mr. Pieter Hazekamp, who is the director of the CPB, which is the Netherlands Bureau for Economic Analysis. and he said, well, there are too many people losing money. We should intervene and ban Bitcoin and blockchain and other cryptocurrencies. Of course, we at BlockchainLab Drenthe think that is a little bit nearsighted. We can show a lot of good projects with blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And there are lots of other examples where people lose money, maybe in the casino or lottery or whatever, which the government doesn't ban. So why would you do this? We think it's one of the reasons is that there is a lack of knowledge how these processes work. We also see that people are losing money. I'll come back to that in a few moments. But banning Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is not the way. I think regulations should be better, and information for people who step into that arena has to improve also. Quite the opposite of what Mr. Hazekamp did this week is done by President Najib Bukele, who is the president of El Salvador. El Salvador has accepted the Bitcoin as an official currency in that country. El Salvador is a very poor country in South America, and they have their own currency, the colon, but they haven't been using it since 2001. They have switched over to US dollars, and now President Bukele says, well, we want to move away from the US dollars, and we want to start accepting in an official way, banks and shops everywhere, Bitcoin as our currency. Now, El Salvador is the first country in the world making that switch. Of course, a lot of banks and a lot of governments are venting their comments about that. Mr. Bukele asked the World Bank for some assistance in the transition from the US dollar to Bitcoin, but they had a little bit other opinion. They don't want to help in, and of course the World Bank is not going to help El Salvador, making the World Bank obsolete, right? So they are staying away from that. He has to do that on his own. Talking about these what Mr. Hazekamp referred to as scams, you might receive this kind of mails in your mailbox, right? And it's in Dutch, but I can translate for you that this is not a scam. We are a legit way for you to make lots of money, and celebrities work with it, and we want you to use it also. Now, these and many other ways are being used by scammers to lure you into investing your money into all kinds of small coins for pump and dump schemes and other stuff. And Youth Care Drenthe approached BlockchainLab and signaled that lots of young people, juveniles, are getting into that arena, investing their rent money and the money they need to do their shopping into cryptos, and hoping to get rich. And most of the time that doesn't work that way, right? If you have been working in the crypto space for a little bit longer time, you know that if it looks too good to be true, then it probably is. So we made an infographic, a poster that you see here next to me, informing students. We sent this to all kinds of schools, informing teachers what's going on, and that they have to talk with their students about it. And it has been spreading through Drenthe and also other parts of the country. We made a page on our website where we also explain a little bit what's going on, what to look for, how do you identify a scam, right? That's sometimes very hard, and greed and fear are very strong emotions. And when people are very greedy, the fear goes out of the window and they start investing. And I know of at least one project that here in Emmen gives out free money to students to invest. Here you have some money. That's how much I believe in our protocol. And of course you have to put some money of your own in, but go and invest. Invest wisely is what we're saying, and don't do it with your shopping money where you buy your food with. Talking about scams, do you remember the end of last year the scam with the Ledger Nano, right? This thing, some hackers compromised the server of Ledger and got a few 100,000 names and addresses. Right? Andreas Antonopoulos made a series of videos of what was going on and how much warnings, how much were people have to look out for when this happened. That nobody has your private keys. It's not a very big deal. They only have your address, and you might get a mail. Ledger owner, there is something wrong. Please go to this website. Don't click it. Well, there is a new dimension. Right? We thought it wasn't very malicious, but then this showed up. There had been people receiving new Ledger Nanos from the Ledger company, still wrapped in plastic, right, sealed, etc. Here with a nice letter to it. Here you have a new Ledger Nano on us. Please activate it, put it in your computer, type in your 24 words, and so everything is transferred to your new ledger, and you'll live happy ever after. Sorry for the inconvenience, the Ledger company. Can you spot what is wrong? They took new nanos, made a hardware modification where they put a memory stick in there and soldered it back up. Right, this is the original and this is the modified one. And when you use that in your PC, it'll send the 24 words to their server. They will install that and take all your money. So, as always, when you receive a letter, an email, even a box like this, which looks legit, always contact the company, right? Call them, send them an email, not replying on the email that you got. No, from your own contact book, send them an email asking them if they know about this, if this is legit, before activating something like this. Because in a scam like this, you could lose all your money. Okay, that's it for the news, what's going on in the blockchain space. I'll see if there are any questions and try to answer them. Okay. I haven't seen any questions so far. I've seen some remarks about the halvening. You're absolutely right, Albert. There is less and less computational power, so the hash rate goes down, and we'll probably see the complexity go down. So it'll be easier to mine for Bitcoins. Easier between quotes, of course, because it still is pretty complex. With your computer at home, it'll still take you a few years to mine your first few coins. But those big companies, those big mining farms, they will have it a little bit easier to mine them. Let me see, Isha. What about this heist, Adi? I don't know exactly what heist you mean. There are heists happening every month, so there are always people trying to be cleverer than the rest and steal, most of the time they steal private keys and then transfer the money through these private keys to their own account. Especially in Bitcoin, there hasn't been a compromise yet, so the algorithm isn't cracked in the last 11 years, 12 years. Let me see. The two brothers vanish with 4.8 billion of Bitcoin in history's biggest crypto heist. I've read about that. I don't have the details, but taking out cryptos, and this wasn't Bitcoin. Yeah, I remember it was something else. Taking out cryptos is one thing. I mean, taking them from an account. Having them in your pocket to spend is something completely different, right? So a blockchain is transparent and immutable. So the first thing that will happen is that everybody takes a binocular and starts watching the account numbers where the money is transferred to. So you might have these coins in your account, but you still cannot do anything with it. So they will leave them there, and in half a year they will transfer them. They will cut them up in small parts and transfer them through all kinds of accounts. But it only takes a computer, right, to put a tracker on these coins and see what's happening. And as soon as you buy something significant in the real world with them, they will catch on to you, right? If you will buy yourself a house, they will look it up and see the deed, who bought it, in whose name it is. If you go and spend your money on vacations, they will find the name on your airline ticket, etc. So stealing coins from an exchange, from anything, is one thing. It's hard, but you have to compromise a server and circumvent the security. Spending the money is something completely different. So I'm absolutely sure that these guys are having a problem. The same was this week or last week. It was that there was a ransomware. Do you know the oil pipeline in America where they took money and this ransomware was so destructive that all the gas prices in America went up, right? And they send out a press release that that wasn't really what they meant, but they couldn't help it anymore. So I believe they got 75 Bitcoins out of that. Now, that was a ransomware heist. And you don't do a ransomware yourself. You go on the dark web, you pay 12 Bitcoins, and somebody else does this ransomware trick for you. Now, FBI found out. FBI found out who did it and where the money is. And so they found those 75 minus 12 is 63 Bitcoins in an account. And the story goes is that they in some way knew how to find the private keys. Now that was a little bit of a shock in the Bitcoin world. That is the problem. Everybody thought, okay, the FBI is able to find private keys. Now my money isn't safe anymore, right? But very fast after that, there was also news that they weren't able to crack it. But they found, in what way wasn't disclosed, the private keys, and they got back the 63 Bitcoins. So the guys who did that could go to jail for a very long time and have nothing from the heist, from the ransomware. But I always think it's interesting to see how they do it. Don't get me wrong, I am very much against the scams. But I think it's very interesting to see how they do it, and so you can warn other people not to step into those tricks, like the poster we made for all the students. Okay, are there any other questions? Not really, so to see. Okay, then what we'll do is we'll go to the next session where Rutger Bijl from Northchain is going to explain what Northchain is and what they do and how it works. And after that, we'll come back and we'll have a Q&A session with Rutger and Herman Balsters together, answering all your questions.
Hello everyone and welcome to this presentation. On behalf of Northchain, I would like to say that we are very happy to be speaking here at BlockchainLab Drenthe and that we hope that we can provide you with an interesting presentation. And that means that we hope to provide you with some interesting insights into what Northchain does, how Northchain uses blockchain, and how blockchain technology might be used to tackle the challenge of integrating different companies and systems. So, first things first, of course, introducing the company of Northchain. If I had to keep it very simple, I would say that Northchain is a very special software company. And the company was founded about 3 years ago by academics and software engineers. And they started from the premise that there exists a very large gap between end users of IT, which is basically everyone nowadays, and software developers. So the producers of the technology that almost everyone uses nowadays. And because of this large gap, there's also this increasing problem of digital illiteracy. I think this is a problem that is even apparent at the top of our own government with some recent scandals, such as with the health agencies, the GGD's. So because of this digital illiteracy and the large gap between end users and software developers, I think it might be wise, and the Northchain people think as well, to rethink the way we currently build software. And Northchain basically built a tool and developed a method that definitely contributes to closing this gap. So the focus of their solution, so the what we do, is on helping organizations to understand, automate, optimize and automate, and audit their own processes. And Northchain also offers a possibility, so they offer solutions on integrating processes within the company with existing IT infrastructure. And how that works, I will explain later on in this presentation. But simply said, what we do is making software completely supportive. So developing software that is completely supportive to the actual processes of any kind of organization. Because this method and this tool can be applied to any kind of organization in any kind of field. How we do this, so talking strategy. The strategy of Northchain is not to focus on consultancy activities by ourselves, but to educate strategic partners. So these strategic partners are able to develop IT solutions themselves by using Northchain's methods and tools. Okay. So how does Northchain develop these software solutions? How does that work? As you can see, this slide is split in two sides. At the top we have the business part, and at the bottom we see compiler. First, of course, talking about the top side. So where does for us start an IT project? Well, as with building a bridge or the construction of a building, the project starts with designing the final solutions, and that is our approach to building IT as well. So instead of drawing a building or drawing the bridge, we draw process models. So we use models to reflect how the processes run, or how the actual processes run. And then these process models, they serve as sort of a conceptual blueprint, so blueprint for IT solutions. Then we enrich these process models with data, and then we are already almost ready with the IT project. Because Norsin has built a tool that allows to automatically generate workflow software. So this compiler provides also non-ITers, so you do not have to have any coding skills or knowledge of coding to develop software with the Nordchain tools and methods. And additionally, I think that you can also already imagine this benefit because we use a compiler, because we do not code the actual end product. This technology radically speeds up the development time of the realization of an IT solution. Now you see also the term blockchain. The blockchain technology is used to develop workflows. So it is actually the fundament of workflow software, because blockchain has some very nice features and promises that we will briefly discuss in a bit. And lastly, this compiler, which automatically generates code, also automatically generates a dashboard. And this is the end product that the Nordchain technology offers. And of course, this is actually what you see here is a dashboard that has been automatically generated, and currently the team is already working on making fancier dashboards that are automatically being produced, but it also is working on providing a tool, or actually producing a tool that allows non-ITers, such as myself, to develop these dashboards ourselves without having to code. So that's also a very interesting development that's going on. So basically, a summary of what I just told. The approach of the method is that we really focus on business processes, and that the IT should reflect how the business processes run in reality. So the IT should be supportive to the actual processes. Therefore, we make a process model where we describe the activities that have to be occur, the sequence, and of course the responsible actor. And this could be a real person, this could be a department, this could be an organization, this could be a system. But anyway, someone has to be responsible for the execution of a certain task. And of course, this process model needs to be extended with data. So data that is consumed and produced at every step. If we have an overview like that, there is so far no need to have any knowledge of coding. You only need to make a business analysis of the actual processes, and then you rely on the compiler, which then automatically generates workflow IT and has some nice features that allows to integrate this solution with existing IT systems. So basically, you can summarize it as we're not focusing on programming, but instead we are focusing on modeling, because we have a tool that allows us to automatically generate the IT solution from our models. And I think it's very interesting that instead of having all these IT people working on an IT project, we have people that are focused on the real business. So what is actually going on, and how can IT support this actual process? And therefore, also 80% of the time in an IT project that we are involved in is on producing and validating this process model, and then only 20% is on actually developing the IT solution. Okay, so we have this process model that is the very start from our IT project, and then we have the compiler that automatically translates input to workflow software. But we of course need certain input, And this input is derived from the process model by means of the OLE language. And OLE language stands for Object, Logic, and English, and is a highly structured but natural language. You can see at the bottom a very brief example. I think everyone is just able to read it and understand what it says. But this OLE language has been developed by Herman Balsters. And currently, it's also not even needed anymore to understand this language in much detail, as the software team of Norchain have created an editor. And this editor is basically a fill in the gap exercise and helps preventing any mistake. So that makes life of non-ITers and also ITers to develop who want to develop IT much simpler, even simpler. I think it's also interesting to note that the ratio of this OLE text, so one line of OLE, for example, to code is approximately 1 to 200. So I think that's massive. Okay, so that is basically a discussion of the first hypothesis that we can see on the slide. So that is that one OLE engineer can replace many programmers. Secondly, we already discussed that we use process models as our blueprints for IT systems. So this is very important. We are very much focused on building very accurate process models as blueprints for IT solutions. And then brief discussion on how, for example, the blockchain is used. So, of course, blockchain is used for its very nice promises in terms of immutability, transparency, traceability, and security, but also because of smart contracts. And we use smart contracts, I think, in a very interesting way, because in this solution, the smart contracts represent, each smart contract represents a step in the business process. As in every step, the role, a detailed description of what needs to happen at that specific step. So, for example, the data that needs to be handled there, and also business rules. So, smart rules, if-then statements. So, for example, if a certain decision is made, what will happen then? Which step will follow which step? That is all included in the smart contracts. And then I think it's also interesting to note, especially for this audience that I think has some deep interest into new technologies, that these smart contracts also actually represent or are a form of RPA, Robotic Process Automation. And that is, I think, two main reasons. All roles and the activities, so the steps in the process and the business rules, are known in advance by developing this process model. And therefore, these process models will show what the next step will be under what circumstances or under what conditions. So the workflow software will automatically and correctly guide the user through this whole process. And secondly, steps in a process can be executed automatically by the blockchain or the system if certain conditions are met. So if, for example, one step is executed, then we move to the next one. But also this execution of a step does not have to be conducted by a human being, but it can also be done by the system, as long as certain conditions are met. And this can be described in smart contracts, which then, of course, derive from the blueprint of our process. Okay. So summarizing, the blockchain then basically becomes the digital twin of the business process. Norchain uses, I think, instead of using the current popular approach of using blockchain and build platforms to provide solutions, the solution of Norchain is rather different, because they use it to provide the end user of the system with capabilities and tools to develop their own blockchain-based workflow system, where every step in the process is a form of is a sort of a smart contract. Okay, so I think that is an introduction into the company of Nordchain. And as I do not want to make this presentation too long, I would like to move on to an interesting topic, I think, in both the blockchain space as in general in the IT space. So we also wanted to focus in our presentation on how blockchain can help in cross-linking and so integrating different companies and systems. And we would like to do this in light of the rise of Industry 4.0, as they name it. So we have the first three industries already kind of behind us. So Industry 1 with the development of steam, 2 with the assembly lines and electricity, and Industry 3.0 with the development of increasing automation. And then Industry 4.0 is basically the foundation of Industry 4.0 rests in complete digitalization and connection of the whole supply chain. Where, for example, cyber physical systems, as they call it, are expected to play an important role. So these cyber physical systems are systems that consist of both software and hardware, which are seamlessly integrated to perform well-defined tasks. So that is a very, very abstract and theoretical definitions, but generally these systems use sensor technology to monitor our environment, so the physical environment, and then because they have some predefined rule programmed in there, they perform certain activities depending on the circumstances. So those are all these smart appliances that I think many of us have already at home to, for example, regulate the temperature in our room, or that the lights turn on when someone is close to home. But anyway, I think that is relatively funny if you refer it to how we use smart contracts, because the smart appliances also execute steps in a process when certain conditions are met. And that is something we just discussed with how smart contracts are also used in a business process. Anyway, the main challenge, at least for Industry 4.0, basically resides in integration of all these various smart tools, AI, all these IT systems. Those needs to be integrated, of course, in some way. And that is both within companies as across companies. And that is still a very, very large challenge that has not been where no real answer has been found to. Herman, in his many years as a professor at the university, already has extensively investigated this data and system integration challenge, and he also published several papers about it. And from his experience and expertise, and so background in databases and information systems, he refers to it as the challenge of data federation. And as I mentioned, the kind of interesting thing is that up till today, no real solution has been found on how to solve this problem of data integration. But fortunately, the development of blockchain and smart contracts seem to offer a suitable solution in many cases. So the main thing with this new development of blockchain and smart contracts, and why it offers such a massive potential to solve this integration challenge, is that previously this data federation challenge was looked at from a data perspective. So the researchers looked at all the different databases that were available, all the different data fields, and then wanted to combine these into, for example, a new database where all data had to be included. The blockchain proposes basically to offer or to take a process perspective instead of a data perspective. And by taking a process perspective, we only have to include the data from every database that is needed, so the minimal amount of data that is needed to successfully execute our process. So therefore, the blockchain does not need access to an entire database or an entire system, but it only needs access to a so-called few, so only a very small part of the database, where the blockchain can pick up the data that is needed for successful execution of the process, and it does not need to see the rest of the database, because the integration of various companies and systems, of course, opposes challenges itself too, relating to data protection of highly sensitive data. While on the other hand, of course, you want to offer a appropriate level of transparency. So the blockchain definitely offers a potential by being able to only pick up the data that is needed to successfully execute a process. So at Norchain, we work with the blockchain platform that is offered by Corda R3. And Corda has this nice functionality that allows to relatively easy integrate various external data sources into your process by so-called oracles, as you can see in the middle of the slide. So again, we take a process perspective, and then at every step, we just think about, okay, what data do I need to successfully execute my work here? And if that data needs to come from an external data source, let's say a data source that is being handled by the government, for example, the land registry or the cadastre, then we, by means of smart rules and smart contracts, we determine what we are looking for. So we have a reference input, and then to this reference input, certain data is attached into the external database. And then we can retrieve this data, insert it in our own process, and we can continue our process without having the need to fully access this database. And I think the next slide, shows a schematic overview of how this works. So we have our main process right here. And then we have some sort of a supporting process, and then, for example, a database at another company, maybe our supplier, maybe a government institution where we need data from. And then the link needs to be made only once with this oracle, and then we can retrieve data and insert it into our process in the way that we want it by using a so-called semantic filter. Or in other words, by making use of smart rules to make sure that the data that we retrieve from an external database is formatted in the right way so that we can use it in our own process. So, for example, we want to know, from our supplier, we retrieve a bag of bananas, and we want to have it in kilograms instead of in pieces or whatever. So that those are important things to consider, and those are challenges that can be solved by, for example, the means of smart rules, so that it can be automatically executed. Also interesting to mention, I think, is that because of the functionality and characteristics of the blockchain, that is, it logs all data on that is put on the blockchain in an immutable way. The process owner, so the one on the top, is always able to prove that at a certain time, so it's being timestamped, the data that has been, you can always prove what data you have retrieved from an external database at what time. So this means that, or actually this allows for separation of concerns, because you are always able to prove the data that you retrieved from an external database. And then the supplier of the data becomes responsible for delivering the correct data to your process. And I think that is also a very nice feature that the blockchain allows you to benefit from. Okay, to summarize, the blockchain in our case, in the Nordchain method, can be considered as a technical representation of a process that runs, and this process runs through, does not have to, can also be within a company, but it can also be a process that runs through various organizations and uses various systems that feed the process, the blockchain, with certain information. So in other words, it can be connected to all these smart appliances where it collects data from, but it can also be connected to external data sources, so data systems that are in ownership of external companies, for example, a supplier or a governmental institution, as I mentioned. Then by taking this process perspective to develop workflow software and using the functionalities of blockchain, it seems that we can definitely help in this very large integration challenge in order to help the realization of Industry 4.0. And I think one of the main reasons is that the use of smart contracts, because these smart contracts, they have the potential to improve coordination and establish the trust within the value chain by automatically verifying that the production process actions are executed according to the contracted specifications. So the way that you agreed upon with your supplier, for example. So therefore, the smart contracts can be considered as the validation mechanisms, as they provide a detailed description of how a step should be executed. One critical success factor that needs to be mentioned, though, in order for this idea, actually this proposed solution to be successful, is that these companies that are in charge of external databases. So, for example, let's say that we are a supply chain company or a production company, and we want to integrate some of our processes with our supplier, and our supplier uses IT systems from, let's say, SAP, SAP, or Exact. Then these suppliers of IT, SAP and Exact, for example, need to partially open up their system, as in they need, of course, to give access or open up a very small window so that we can collect the data that we need from our process. So that is one very important critical success factor that needs to be mentioned, because if the supplier of IT does not allow you to do that, then you might have a problem. But of course, since the company in charge that has this contract with, since the company is in charge because they have signed this IT contract, usually this is not a very big problem. Okay, that is all that I wanted to discuss in this presentation. So I think main takeaway is that Nordchain, from what Nordchain offers, is that Nordchain thinks that there is no one size fits all, or no technology that no one size fits all and no technology first solutions are the way to go. But instead, we have to look at the actual process and make that central in our approach to develop IT projects. And I think that with this approach, this process perspective and developing IT solutions from process models, that we can support in the realization of Industry 4.0. We are very interested in hearing your thoughts on this solution, but I think maybe even more so in hearing your suggestions or alternative solutions. So of course Herman is here, and Herman and me will be available for the discussion, and we are available to answer any questions right now. Maybe also to offer some practical examples that we already have encountered. But also for those that are watching this another time, please find us via the website or send us an email so that we can get in contact, have a discussion, or answer answer your questions. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, now that was a lot of information and very interesting. Let me get Rutger and Herman on the screen if I am going to succeed at that. That is going to work. No, where are they? Calling. Oh, that is strange. That is not working as we rehearsed it. Let me see if I'm in the right place. Ah, I see what's going on. That's the way we have to do it. The wrong button. It is always the wrong button. Okay, welcome Rutger and Herman. Thank you, Rutger, for the presentation. I see a lot of questions in the chat, and I saw Herman already answering one or two of them. Just let me start with the first question. Jeroen says an interesting starting point. You don't need to be a developer, but you need to be able to model your business process. Are users capable of modeling their own processes? Which of the two gentlemen would like to answer that question?
Shall I do it?
Of course. Yep.
Okay. Yes. Anybody who is involved in the process can do the modeling. You see, what we try to do is it's just a group of people trying to build a network that the process consists of, and any participant inside that network can be a participant in the complete modeling endeavor. So let's say if 10 people are together and trying to build this process, all 10 of them can join in the modeling process.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe let me explain a little bit. For instance, if you look at language as on its own, right? You have normal spoken language, and you have language as it is used in law, right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not very good at expressing myself at that level. I'm a programmer, think logic, etc. But writing laws is a thing in itself. And I think what Jeroen tries to ask is, do you have to have special skills to rephrase your sentences so the language will pick it up?
Well, of course, you have to have special skills, but you see, actually what you're doing when you're writing these process models is you're abstracting from programming code. Programming code is a lot of detail, it's lengthy, a lot of detail. And when you're modeling, you're abstracting away from certain detail. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to pinpoint using a business modeling analysis, saying who are the users, what is the data that we have to use, what are the process steps, in which order do we do the process steps, and then we look inside the process step, which business rules do you have to use? And there's a certain format that we always have for business rules. It's like a logic programming format on a high level. But let's say anybody who knows their process and they have a bit of a feeling for exact thinking, they can learn our language within a few days very, very easily and know how they can put all these business elements inside such a process model. So you can get the stakeholders, you can get the data, you can get the constraints, you can get the business rules inside these models. And we just, not too long ago at the university, we had a learning community, and we educated some 50 students very, very quickly in this modeling technique.
Great, super. Okay, I hope this answers Jeroen's question. Let me see. Ali asks the question, the model, should it conform with specific standards like UML or BPMN?
I answered that.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, there are a lot of models in this world, but not very many of those models can be put into a compiler and generate code. The model-driven development was once an initiative of the UML community, but they never succeeded in fulfilling their promise because the UML models were too ambiguous and they were not complete, and it was very difficult to write anything like a compiler. I mean, the ideal in the late 90s was that you could put in, let's say, a class diagram and a UML process model, throw that into a compiler, you get Java code. Well, they never succeeded in doing that. What we did, we tried to build a process modeling language that was also equipped with a data modeling language. That language is called Golang, from graphical OLE. And that model could then be transformed into our OLE language, which is still very high level, but that's a textual language. And that language was good enough to be compiled and to generate Java code.
Yeah, so right. Compared to, for example, a modeling language as BPMN, I think the Golang language is even easier to learn. So also to respond to Jeroen's question, are all users able to develop their own models? Well, maybe not without a brief education, but it can be learned very, very quickly.
Okay, so there's a very low threshold. Okay. Bert is wondering what is a good source to get some more information on OLE?
As Rutger already pointed out, Northchain is a young company. We've now been in existence for about 3 years. Mainly, we've just been developing our tools and our methods. And let's say the last year, we have confidence that the things that we've been building really work. For example, we have not only modeled but implemented a complete production line for a company here in the north of Holland, using our methods in generating a blockchain to implement a complete supply chain. We haven't really spent a lot of time on documenting for the public what the OLE language looks like. We have a lot of courses, and like I just mentioned, we have given we've given a course at the university, and not too long from now, we're going to also give a course on the HBO level. And let's say, we hope within a short period that we can also produce some documents for the general public to explain more about the OLE language.
Okay, so they just have to watch your website, for instance, or the news or a newsletter or whatever. That is where you will announce it.
Yeah. And, next week we will also launch a new website. It's called Flowchain Academy, and through this company and this platform, it's also our aim to really share this knowledge on, for example, the OLE language and how to really model adequate process models, or actually model the processes adequately, so that you have this blueprint to develop an IT solution. So that is the next thing that's coming, Flowchain Academy. Yeah.
Okay. And then Jeroen has a question, will robotic process automation mean that every process is completely deterministic and that therefore every smart contract generated is valid or known?
Well, the answer is yes. You see, an RPA solution has a precondition that all of the users are known, all of the data that is involved is also known up front, all of the business rules are known, so that you have a completely deterministic picture beforehand what the RPA system has to do. And then it's just a matter of programming the RPA system. That doesn't mean that the RPA system from beginning to end is just one automated system, that is just one big robot. But actually, it's a hybrid system where you have software components that do certain automatic transactions. But there are also people involved, because sometimes you have to have some human intelligence to provide input to the system. So these RPA systems basically are just large dialogue systems where they interact with human users, and some parts of the process inside that system can be completely automated, and that's what they call robots. So they're just software components. But actually, the blockchain is very, very well suited to implement these RPA systems. because you can use them to build these deterministic systems, and because the blockchain has such nice characteristics, you can also prove afterwards, once the system is run, just what you have actually done. So you can prove you have all sorts of compliance issues. You can show that what you have done, and also that it runs to all the standards that you've tried to program into the system.
Yeah, great. Okay, to which programming language does Ole translate the model?
Yeah, that's Corda code. We have various platforms to which we can translate. Our first version of the Ole compiler compiled to Ethereum code, which is JavaScript. And the second compiler, that's the compiler we're using at the moment, that's one that compiles to Corda. And as we all know, Corda is just Java.
Yeah, great. And then I have a last question here from Ali from Oldenburg. Can you reflect the sequencing in Gola, like a sequence diagram?
I think if you want to compare it to a modeling language that is already in existence for quite a while, it's BPMN. Rutger already mentioned that. We like to think in terms of swim lanes. We like to think in terms of sub-processes. So we have sequencing, we have control loops, things like that. That's what we have. So it compares. I think it comes it compares closely to BPMN, but there are certain features of BPMN which we don't like at all. So we had to build in our own features for that. For example, sub-processes in BPMN are restricted to one swim lane. And we would like to have sub-processes that can cover a whole range of swim lanes.
Okay.
And that's why
Great.
we built Ole.
Great. Okay, I don't see any other questions here in the chat. But maybe if somebody would like to ask questions in person, I asked Rutger and Herman to go to our Kumo space after we end this live stream. So you can ask them any question in person. Okay, then it is now time to go to our third segment. We will have Danny Drenthe explain a lot about DeFi.
Welcome to my presentation on how to DeFi the DeFi with the Binance Smart Chain. My name is Danny Drenthe. I am part of the BlockchainLab Drenthe and I'm a tech enthusiast. In this presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of the landscape of DeFi and the Binance Smart Chain. I made this presentation to gain some knowledge on the workings and the dynamics in this area. I'm going to tell about what is DeFi all about, what platforms are there, where's the blockchain part, and a little bit about the Binance Smart Chain. So what's it all about? With blockchain technology, as we know, one of the basic use cases is the transfers of value, a financial transaction in a safe manner, the most known example being Bitcoin. DeFi is the group name for complex financial applications that run on distributed blockchain networks. Regular blockchains used for financial transactions, like Ripple, Bitcoin or Ethereum, can be easily extended to use more complex type of applications like loans, insurance and betting, creating DeFi blockchain applications. The concept of DeFi is not new. For instance, when you start a crowdfunding campaign, you bundle a lot of small loans into one big financial investment. So you create an extra layer on top of an application like the euro. When creating a financial or a transactional marketplace, like a lending borrowing marketplace, it is important to understand the concept of liquidity. We have asset liquidity. That means how easily can you sell your asset in exchange for cash without losing too much value compared to what it's worth, or what you think it is. We have market liquidity. That means the conditions of a market in which an asset can be bought or sold. If there are few buyers and sellers, it's hard to come to an agreement. For instance, the market of trading televisions for wooden shoes, that would be an illiquid market. We also have a thing called funding liquidity. and that's the availability of credit to finance the purchase of financial assets. Funding liquidity is the key source of revenue for banks, and it sources from central banks, interbank market, or a repacked mortgage market, etc. There are strong relations between the different types of liquidity. These relations reflect the activity and the soundness of those markets, and the market actors use those relations to minimize their loss and to maximize their profits. So, what's happening when you create a market or a financial application? Well, let's say you are very good at producing pancakes. They taste delicious and they look fantastic. Every Sunday you make a couple of them. The ones that you can't eat, you start giving them away randomly in the neighborhood. Pretty soon, your left side neighbors, they don't like the randomness any longer, and they contact you to say, we pay you money to skip the randomness, and we want a guaranteed delivery of pancakes. Your right side neighbors notice that and they say, we will pay more. Well, that's the start of your pancake empire. You need to make more pancakes and be a reliable supplier of pancakes. You need more ingredients, staff, machines, delivering, packaging. For that, you need capital. So, in a nutshell, these are the steps when you want to create the market. You want to create demand, you have to create funding liquidity, and you have to create supply. And this is exactly what today's so-called DeFi platforms try to achieve. So the purpose of the current available DeFi and blockchain platforms are centered around providing liquidity for boosting marketplaces. But not only that, because of the relation between the different types of liquidity, functions like speculation, create insurance for taking risk, earn interest rates, they all arise on the platform. As a quick fact, as of January 2021, an estimate of $20 billion is invested in the DeFi platforms. Be aware, providing liquidity into DeFi platforms is something different than staking, where you put your assets on the line as a premise to be part of the consensus mechanism. In a DeFi platform, the available liquidity is called the liquidity pool. Since these platforms are centralized on blockchain, the actual function is performed by smart contracts running on the blockchain network. That means that when you provide funding liquidity to a certain liquidity pool, you hand over your assets to a smart contract. The contract will own the assets, of course, with the promise from the contract that at one point in time, under certain conditions, you can regain ownership of your tokens. Another concept which happens in the DeFi area is something called yield farming. And yield is like the profits you gain from acting on the platform. With the yield farming, you can act very quickly between different DeFi applications. You're going to look for the liquidity pool that give, for instance, the highest interest rate, or something like a liquidity pool that gives voting rights. These voting rights, they enable you to determine the future of the liquidity pool, what tokens will be there, under what conditions. So there's also a bit of governance on those liquidity pools based on the ownership rights created by participating in the network. You can, of course, you will receive some interest rate because you lend something to the network, and you can also invest those rights to get tokens back from the network you lend to. And with these tokens, you can, for instance, you can sell them. You can also use it in a leverage scheme, giving even higher yields. There are no rules or regulations in this area. There's no know your customer, no market regulation. There's no anti-money laundering. There's no anti-speculation like a central market maker. That's why the landscape of yield farming is comparable to Wild West Gold Rush. The total value locked in a specific liquidity pool is abbreviated with TVL, total value locked, and it says something about the popularity of the liquidity pool. When you are active in a healthy and transparent market, a transaction is arranged by a mutual agreement of the seller and the buyer of the asset, based on a predefined price. Some markets are a bit more dynamic, and they use an order book, where sellers denote what they want to sell at what price, and where buyers denote what they want to buy at what price. When the two demands meet, a transaction is made between the seller and the buyer. With this type of market making, there's a sell price and a buy price. With markets created with DeFi blockchain platforms, this direct connection, peer-to-peer, between buyer and seller is absent, since the buyer or seller trades with a liquidity pool through the smart contract. To determine the price, an algorithm is used, and in this algorithm, it means if one coin is sold, its price will go up, and the coins that are not being sold, their price will go down. So that's a really simple scheme. In a DeFi platform, such an algorithm is required to interact with the contract of the liquidity pool. So in this algorithm, from there, the DeFi application is called an AMM, an automated market maker, because the market making is being done with an algorithm, so hence the term automated. There are a lot of AMMs available right now, each with their own capabilities. An AMM acts basically like a NASDAQ or a IX, like an exchange, but then completely automatically, without buyer and seller knowing each other. So, little recap. We have the DeFi platform. That's a piece of technology that makes it possible to create markets. We have the liquidity pool. That's a concept and implementation of providing funding liquidity to markets. We have yield farming, which is chasing the highest revenues. And we have a AMM. That's an exchange where you can either provide your liquidity to, or you can trade assets. The blockchain part of the DeFi. We all know that performing a transaction on a blockchain can be costly, can take a lot of time. The popular AMMs, they use smart contracts deployed on Ethereum, and the three most popular right now, I think, are Uniswap, Curve, and Balancer. Running these AMMs can be very lucrative, because every player gets a piece of the pie or a piece of the pancake. The company Binance decided to create its own blockchain. It's called the Binance Smart Chain. It's really based on Ethereum protocol. Instead of proof of work, they use a proof of stake and a proof of authority consensus mechanism, which makes it very fast and cheap to use. So the Binance Smart Chain is a good alternative for Ethereum when it comes to creating an automated market maker. The creation of this particular blockchain, the Binance Smart Chain, it really made the AMM DeFi market took off. At the end of 2020, one famous one arose. It's called Pancake Swap. It was launched on the Binance Smart Chain. So Pancake Swap is a decentralized exchange. It's a AMM application. It's built on the Binance Smart Chain. It also uses additional features such as yield farming across other protocols. It even has a lottery. It has something called initial farm offerings, and a lot of other features that are possible when you creating these kind of applications. Pancake Swap is currently the #1 AMM on the Binance Smart Chain, and its total locked value, it's a whopping $10 billion right now. So that's not too little. The Binance Smart Chain, it's a fun thing to play around with. It's very easy to create your own token. If you create it on the Binance Smart Chain testnet, it's free of cost, as with most testnets. If you want to create a token contract on the actual production network, the mainnet, it will cost you a few cents, maybe $1. It depends on the exchange rate and on the gas, etc. It's not that expensive to play around with it. I created one for this presentation to get a grip on how difficult is it and what can you do with it. So I ended up with our own blockchain token. It's called BlockchainLab Drenthe token, of course. We have currently 1 million. I handed out 2 transactions. I handed out 10 and I handed out a very little value. So there are 1 million tokens on the testnet. For the next lab work, I will try to write up a good marketing plan for the usage of our token. I will try to create demand for our token, and then you all can join our token sale on the Binance Smart Chain mainnet, and I will include some free airdrops for Meetup attendees. And on the Pancake Swap, we will be present to actually trade between real cryptocurrencies. But please watch out for scams in this token swap and Binance Smart Chain and DeFi world. We have a little primer, a statement on token sales. For now it's only in Dutch, but in here we try to tell you something about the risks and what to look for and what to especially not to do. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn and YouTube, and you can contact me. So thank you very much for your attention on this short presentation, and I would like to encourage you to just try it for yourself. Bye-bye.
Okay, so you made 1 million tokens and you gave away 10. Okay, we'll have to talk about that. It's nice that you referred to our poster, so people know that this is not a fraud. Okay, I don't see any questions for Danny in the chat, but Danny is also going to be at our Kumo space right after we close this live stream. So if you have any questions and if you would also like to receive 10 or more tokens from our BCLD token, then just ask him. He might give them to you. Okay, then the next thing on my list is to thank Rutger Bijl and Herman Balsters and Danny Dreves, of course. He made BlockchainLab millionaire, at least in our own token. Our next meetup will be after the summer holidays, right? So we're going to have a break in July and August, and we will be back on September the 16th with a new episode of our online meetups. Online, I'll have to be a little bit cautious to say that, because we are going to talk about our mix with online and physical meetups. So some things might change, but I think this is a format where we have lots of international people attending. I saw someone from Ireland and from Germany, etc., which might be a little bit difficult to come to our meetup in Emmen once a month, but we'll find that out. I'll be a real YouTuber and ask you to subscribe to our channel. That'll help us in the YouTube algorithm. So like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and whatever they always say. Please do. Like I said, we are now entering the informal part of our meetup. So I will give you the address of our Kumo space in the chat. So you only have to click it. Kumospace.com. I think that suffices. Then we will meet you there. Jeroen and Danny will already be there, and Rutger and Herman and all kinds of people. I will have to close the stream and do a few other things, and I'll hope to see you there, of course I'll hope to see you next time. Thank you for attending our meetup.